Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, Jennifer and I are joined by Morgan Adams. And let me give you Morgan's bio because she's pretty awesome and has a really good bio. So Morgan Adams is a holistic sleep coach for women who struggle with getting a good night's sleep consistently. That would be me. Her goal is to help women feel better and live better, and the key to both begins with a good night's sleep. Morgan is an accredited health coach with additional advanced certifications in sleep science. She's a sought-after podcast guest and expert for websites like Mind Body Green. Morgan is also a former insomniac. She spent almost a decade using prescription sleeping pills despite knowing that her overall sleep quality suffered. Morgan now inspires and teaches other women how to confidently, calmly, and effectively get a good night's sleep without the use of sleep aids. Thank God you are here, Morgan. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. What a wonderful welcome. Appreciate that.
Well, I guess we'll just jump right in with the first question being, what's your story? How did you get started with this type of work?
Yeah, well, my sleep story started several years ago. I had a personal crisis in my life, and it triggered an episode of insomnia. And the kind of insomnia I had is probably one that many people can relate to. It's trouble falling asleep. I would literally lie there frustrated, tossing and turning for 2 to 3 hours most nights. And it was beginning to really get on my nerves and affect the quality of my life. So I went to the doctor, as many people do when they have these sleep struggles. And I was given a prescription for Ambien, which is a very popular sedative hypnotic sleeping medication. I didn't think much of it other than just like, this is what the doctor said to take. I will just take it. Right. And the pill actually did help me fall asleep more quickly. So I didn't have that 2-hour struggle. The downside was the next day. I was dealing with a lot of side effects the next day. In particular, a lot of fogginess, a lot of just slow. I felt very slow and sluggish, not sharp at all. And it started to create problems at work for me, honestly, because I had the kind of job where sometimes there was a crisis, in the health department, and I had to come up with a statement very quickly. I had to type very quickly and produce written things quickly, and I wasn't quick enough. The residual effects of the sleeping pills were causing me just to be unfocused. It did create some problems at work. I didn't really become very focused until the afternoon. I also had some side effects that you may have heard before with the pills: late night eating, where you're not really cognizant of the eating. You have paper, like wrappers. It's like the breadcrumbs, from your bedroom to the kitchen. You're like, how did these get here? Thank God I didn't get behind the wheel. There are many, many cases of people who have some, very, very serious side effects and consequences from taking these pills. I took them for about 8 years.
Oh, wow.
A lot longer than I had intended to, but I was just so fearful of not being able to sleep that I continued to take them. And then about 8 years into it, I met my current husband. And when we were in the early stages of dating, he gently and lovingly called me out. And he said, look, Morgan, it really freaks me out after you take these pills to sleep, because you become sort of like a zombie. You're not yourself. And it was like the come to Jesus moment. I was like, these pills have got to go. So I didn't really know how to get off the pills other than just cut them up into smaller little pieces over time. It's called, tapering down. Tapering is a good thing to do, but I didn't know at the time that it would have been better to seek out the advice and counsel of the prescribing physician. So when I'm working with my clients who are on meds, I have them contract with their physician who prescribed the medication to come up with some kind of a titration schedule. And my job is the supporting and accountability person and helping them through that, because it is not easy. It is not an easy thing to take yourself off these pills. And it can be quite dangerous, actually.
In what way?
So with the benzodiazepines, there can be some withdrawal side effects. There's a lot of talk lately about this in the public, and there are some specific protocols that are out there and patient advocacy groups that really help folks who are coming off these drugs. So I'm talking, those are benzodiazepines. Ambien is called a Z drug. They're very similar. I would say, knowing what I know now about sleep and medications, I would have done things differently. And I quite honestly wish a sleep coach had existed when I was going through this. I don't think that was a thing. I mean, I'm sure there were sleep coaches, but they just weren't as prevalent as they are now. So that is my story with the meds. And I got off the meds, slept okay for many years, but then there was a plot twist. And this plot twist kind of affected all of us. It was March of 2020.
Yeah.
When the pandemic started. And my sleep started to suffer again. And I was like, oh, come on now. We're not doing this again.
Right.
So I decided to get very proactive and start researching sleep and looking up how to optimize sleep. And I started implementing these tips that I learned online, and my sleep got better. And thankfully, I was able to catch it in time. As I began to become more interested in sleep and was so fascinated by the fact that I could actually fix my own sleep without medications, I started to share what I was learning with my circle on Facebook, and, just casually, like, hey, here's what I've done. And I came to find out that a lot of other people were struggling at the same time too. A lot of people. Probably the end of 2020 is when I had this massive revelation. It was like, I remember exactly where I was when I had it. It was just powerful. I said, I am going to be a sleep coach for women. I knew that's what I had to do. I had been looking for some type of way to get involved in health on a professional level. Having been a breast cancer survivor twice, I am just deeply committed to women's health. When I had my first diagnosis, I did sort of play around with the idea of maybe becoming a breast cancer coach, but then that just seemed so heavy, but I knew I wanted to help women with their health. And when I had that light bulb moment that it was going to be helping them with sleep, it was off to the races. I was just like, I'm going to do this. Well, how do you do it? So I had to figure out how to get trained. And there's not a lot of training opportunities for becoming a sleep coach. So I had to cobble together many different health coaching and sleep coaching programs, spent a year studying it, and then launched this holistic sleep coaching practice for women November of 2021. So that is the long road to how I got to where I am.
Well, I, for one, am so thankful that you're doing this because, like you said, I mean, sleep coaches are, not so prevalent at this point, and hopefully that's changing. I mean, people can go to like a sleep clinic, right? And, do that whole formal route. But if you don't have the money for it, if you don't have insurance, if there's not a sleep clinic near you, then you're just kind of shit out of luck, right? So
right.
sleep coach is something that's much more accessible for the rest of us.
Yeah, you're right. And a lot of sleep clinics, honestly, are really dealing more with sleep apnea. So that is not an area that I am trained in treating. That's more of a medical thing. I do have clients with sleep apnea who I refer out. I've met a lot of people who are referring professionals who I partner with and helping these women who come to me with insomnia and sleep apnea. It's a double whammy that they get. Another thing, just to kind of add on to your point, is that there are sleep psychologists. If you look up the Society for Sleep Behavioral Medicine, I believe, they are specialists in sleep, and they are mainly psychologists who are trained with a specialty in sleep. the demand, so there are more people than are able to be served by this profession.
Oh,
There are so many more people struggling with their sleep. And so there ends up being a massive wait list for these providers. In fact, I just out of curiosity looked at my own state of Virginia. I only found 4 folks who were in this database who were licensed with the credentials. And think about all the people who are not sleeping well. I mean, it's like technically a third of our country, if you look at the stats.
wow.
So how in the world could 4 doctors in my state serve all these people? So that's where sleep coaches really come in and help with that demand, because we're able to do a lot of the things that other sleep professionals can, except the medical part, and that is when I refer. So when I do my assessments on people when we're starting out, I'm able to find professionals that can help the client in areas that I can't. There's so many different sleeping disorders. There's narcolepsy, there's restless leg syndrome, there's parasomnias. Those are things that I can sort of recognize by talking to somebody, but I refer out because it's beyond my scope. So I kind of know my lane. And I think most sleep coaches do. We're trained in behavioral ways to help people with their sleep. There is a need, and the field is growing exponentially.
What kind of methodologies do you use? I mean, you're not a medical doctor, so you don't prescribe medication, and it sounds like maybe medication not so great.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that you help people who are having sleep issues?
Good question. So I take a very holistic approach. I like to look at the entire person. So when I first meet with somebody, I'm like the sleep sleuth. I'm asking lots of questions.
I like that.
The sleep detective. And so I'm asking questions about, their exercise, their nutrition, their bedroom, how they interact with light during the day, their use of technology. And so I'm really kind of troubleshooting a lot of the things that are going on in their environment. I'm also looking at their chronotype, which is a fancy way of saying, are you an early bird or a night owl? So there's a test that you can take online. And then once you find out your chronotype, you can manipulate your bedtime and wake time, times to be productive at work. You can really change the way you schedule your day and night for maximum productivity and sleep. For some people who have insomnia, which is probably 75% of my client base, I use some techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And that is what the psychologists do. So I've taken, some courses on this and have studied it a lot. And basically what it is, it's a brief form, it's a brief intervention, several weeks long. And it's dealing with the behavioral changes that need to take place with sleep. For an example of this might be somebody who has insomnia is in bed for 10 hours only to generate 7 hours of sleep, right? So what we need to do is work with them on making the time that they're in bed really more match the time that they're sleeping in bed. So we're trying to compress their sleep. We're trying to get them to have a consistent wake time. That's so important to anchor your circadian rhythm. So there's a lot of behavioral modifications in that regard. You're basically retraining your brain to sleep. And then on the cognitive part of the CBTI area, we're looking at some unhelpful thoughts and attitudes that people have about sleep. And we're trying to correct for those and make them more sleep promoting. An example of that would be something I hear a lot is, I need 8 hours of sleep to function. I must get 8 hours of sleep. Okay, well, the reality is that most people do not need 8 hours of sleep. Most people need about 7, give or take. And then the whole part of functioning, well, you can actually function fairly decently without 8 hours of sleep. I think it is sort of like a myth that's been perpetuated in the media that everyone needs 8 hours when that's not the reality. So there's several examples like that clients have that we need to almost re-educate them about sleep and correct for these unproductive thoughts and attitudes. So that's kind of what CBTI is like. when you say CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy, it's not like therapy, like sit down on the couch and we'll like rehash your childhood. It's very structured, and it's actually more behavioral in nature. It's changing a lot of habits. That is sort of how I work as a sleep coach. And I think a lot of sleep coaches work in similar ways, but I think everyone has their own kind of way of doing things and their own methodology about what works for their clients.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's sort of what I do.
Well, about 100 things came up for me in that
Yeah.
explanation. Both of you, please don't hate me. I'm one of those people who has the gift of sleep. I sleep very well, always
Good for you.
have, can sleep anywhere. But I have a lot of friends and a daughter that really struggle with sleep. They talk about it all the time. I was wondering, are there like main reasons why people struggle with sleep?
There are a variety of different reasons. Sometimes it can be things like their environment, like a snoring partner, things outside your house, like noises. There can be physical things happening, like sleep apnea, which actually can wake you up, chronic pain. What I see most in my client base is anxiety and stress, is people who have those types of anxious personalities. They worry a lot and they have a hard time decompressing. That is mainly, the kind of client I see. So what I do with those clients is help them work on mindfulness practices, because teaching people how to downregulate their system through meditation, breath work. There's other methods like progressive muscle relaxation, tapping. There's all sorts of things you can do to get your body and brain in a more relaxed state. I think that if, I had to say the bulk of people are having a lot of issues because of the anxiety and worry, but that's not all of it, but that's a big chunk of it.
And that makes sense that COVID kind of spurred that on for a lot of
Yes.
people.
Absolutely.
I have a teenager that struggles with sleep, and I often talk to her about her use of her cell phone at night, or it's not so much television with the younger generation, it's the cell phones. How much do you think that plays into it?
It can play a big role in getting people too activated. So there is blue light coming out of our cell phones, and that's not great. However, there has been some research lately showing that it's not necessarily the blue light that's so bad. Some of the things that are detrimental about the cell phone use are the brightness of the light coming at you. Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to say that blue light doesn't matter. It does, but there are other things that are actually proving to be very important as well. So there's the brightness of the device, which is important. So you can always go to your settings and dim them down and put them in night. I think it's called night mode, night shift or something like that, where the hue becomes more red or orange. And then the main thing I see is stimulating content on a phone, bantering back and forth on social media, things that can charge people up, especially like with a teenager like yours. I mean, there's a lot of, I don't have kids, but from what I've heard, there can be just a lot of unpleasantness going on with the teenagers, and, the bullying and the just negativity. So I think one of the main things about being on the cell phone is the activation that is caused by what you're doing on your cell phone. So for example, if you are sitting there on your couch at 8 p.m. and you're scrolling for yoga pants, and that's your purpose. Like, I'm going to be on my phone and find yoga pants. That's a pretty non-triggering event for most of us. So that's not a problem, but it's when you get on social media, I think, or the news, the media, that's a tough one. I recommend that most people shut down their devices like an hour before bed. Now, this wouldn't apply to your teenager, I don't think, unless your teenager's involved in some kind of professional work. But a lot of people will check their work emails like before
homework.
Homework. Okay.
Homework. Yep.
This is how old I am.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting because of social media and phones, our work, our homework, our school
Mhm.
life, everything
Mhm.
penetrates our home life in a way that it didn't before all of that.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
true. Very true.
Absolutely. So
Mhm.
really I think a very good practice is to shut down your phone an hour before bed and just kind of put it in another room. I think that putting your phone to bed in another bedroom is an excellent practice. A lot of my clients actually use their phone as an alarm, and the phone is next to their bed.
Me
I do
too.
that.
Both of
I
you
do
all
too.
raising your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this can be a problem for a lot of people because, well, one, for our health, the EMFs radiating from our phone while they're charging can be pretty significant. So that's one issue for our health. But then when you have a phone sitting next to your bed, and let's just say you wake up at 2 a.m., you could either pick
Peak.
up the phone and be like, oh,
Mhm.
what's going on? Well, so once in the dark like that, and at that time of night, you do not want any blue light on you at that time of night. It is just not a good idea. You could also get hooked into looking at things, and the next thing you know, it's an hour later and you're activated again. So
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not able to get back to sleep. The second thing about the phone by your bed is that a lot of people will check the phone to see what time it is, right?
Yeah.
And that can be a problem for a lot of people with insomnia, because if they pick up their phone and it's 3 o'clock and they're like, shit, I've got to be up in 3 hours. What am I
Yep.
going to do? How am I going to, how am I going to survive? I only got 3 more hours.
Yep.
What am I going to do? So I think a best practice is to take your phone into maybe a closet in your room, if you have a closet, or if you have like a bathroom or some room that's like attached to your bedroom, and charge your phone there. It's a lot better of a solution than having it right next to you, because it's super tempting to pick it up.
The other thing I hear a lot from my friends is that they haven't used Ambien that I know of, but they will say, I like to have 2 drinks before I go to bed because it makes me fall asleep faster. Or
Mhm.
now that I don't know about your states, but marijuana is legal in Michigan, and a lot of people are saying that they use marijuana for the same thing. What is your thought about those type of things as a replacement for Ambien, or is it still detrimental?
Yeah. Well, it's short answer is it is detrimental. And alcohol is actually the most commonly used sleep aid that we have. A lot of people do have that nightcap to wind down and make them sleepy. So the reality is that alcohol will sedate you and will make you more relaxed, and you probably will be more apt to fall asleep more quickly than you would without the alcohol. However, what happens during the night is that your sleep gets fragmented, it gets broken up. You tend to have early morning wake ups. Sometimes you have those wake ups because your blood sugar crashes,
Mhm.
and that wakes you up. You might wake up because you have to go to the bathroom. It also cuts into your deep sleep. So really, if you have alcohol as a sleep aid, you're going to risk having sleep that is not as high quality, and
Okay.
you may not feel as refreshed the next day. For people who, do like alcohol or do like to have a glass of wine, and I do enjoy a glass of wine here and there, but what I have learned over time is that it is better to think about alcohol from the stance of like happy hour versus
Mhm.
nightcap. And I have actually done multiple tests on myself using this Aura ring that I have here on my
Mhm.
finger, where I will, for example, have one glass of wine at 5 o'clock, and I'll compare it to like a time when I had like a glass of wine at 7 p.m.
Okay.
It's a very, very different situation because I haven't allowed the alcohol enough clearance out of my body. So
Got it.
if you are going to enjoy an alcoholic beverage, just try to like allow yourself at least like 3 to 4 hours between the last sip and your bedtime. I think that's a really good rule of thumb. Marijuana, there's been a lot of controversy about that lately, but from the latest research that I've seen is that it does impact your sleep quality, especially your deep sleep, and that it's not overall a very healthy thing for you to do long term. CBD is something that I think is a lot more palatable. I don't think that the CBD is having these consequences like straight up marijuana. So I think that CBD would be a more would be a safer option than marijuana. And CBD, there isn't like a ton of data right now about it. And there's, some mixed data, but I think it's sort of looked at as sort of a neutral thing at this point. For people who have a lot of anxiety or pain, I think they are probably pretty good candidates for CBD.
I've used CBD before when I've had a really long run, like a half a marathon, and my legs are so sore that I can't sleep.
Yeah.
If I do a CBD, then I can usually relax enough to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good use for it.
Yeah.
No, I think it's really great that y'all are bringing up CBD, because I have tried, along with CBD, I've tried like a bunch of different other things trying to help with my sleep. At different times, I'll have trouble either falling asleep and or staying asleep. And so I've tried CBD, like different formulations, different brands, different strengths. I've done tinctures, I've done the capsules, I've done the gummies. Like I literally have done so many different things, because I mean, I've not taken Ambien, but I have a friend who took Ambien and had some really disturbing circumstances arise from taking Ambien. So I've been just completely afraid of that. But I've tried Unisom, I've tried, all these other things. I've tried herbal things, and I really have not yet found something that consistently and efficiently works for me.
Yeah.
Granted, yeah, I mean, I'm 53, so maybe it's menopause, because I am postmenopausal. What can women like me do? I mean, I'm at that time in my life where, everything's kind of topsy-turvy because of menopause. Is there hope for me that I'll ever get a full night's sleep? Like I mean, consistently for years now have not gotten more than 5 or 6 hours of sleep in a night.
Yeah. So is your problem more that you're waking up in the middle of the night?
Oh yeah, I wake up in the middle of the night, like pretty much every night, unless, don't judge me, people, unless I have drank too much and then I passed out.
Right.
And woke up like when my alarm went off.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm getting to, I'm 52 and I'm dealing with early morning awakenings, 4 or 4:30. And I am in the process of getting my hormones tested. I'm thinking about going on HRT, hormone replacement therapy. So I feel like that is an option for women in our age category, but I feel like there are other things you can do before you go down that route, right?
Okay.
Basically, practicing good sleep hygiene, like, getting, like, turning down the lights,
Okay.
doing, trying to eat dinner on the earlier side is helpful. So there's some basic sleep hygiene. Now, I do want to say that, like, it is normal to wake up like once a night. It's totally normal. Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll even see ads that'll be like, this supplement will, like, very kind of dramatic language, like, will help you sleep all night long without waking up. And there's just verbiage that's out there with products, because I'm very, like, my eyes go to that. Like, plus on Instagram, all I get fed is like ads for sleep things. So I see them all, right? But it is actually very normal to have 1 or 2 brief awakenings at night. In fact, when we go through our sleep stages, we go through like 4 to 6 a night. Typically we wake up at the end of a sleep stage, right? So, and it's sort of a ancestral phenomenon. The theory is that after the sleep stage, we briefly wake up to scan our environment for safety. And then we go right back to sleep. Now, most of the time we don't even know we've woken up, but there are times that we are aware that we've woken up. And so it's totally fine. It's when people start to worry and stress about the awakening, that's when it becomes a problem. And that when the patients who see me, it's a problem for them, because they are worrying so much about being awake, and they're awake for, more than a half an hour. If you're able to get back to sleep within like 10 or 20 minutes, and you have maybe one awakening a night, it shouldn't really impact your sleep quality too much.
Okay.
Right? So just to kind of put into perspective about awakenings, if you have like several awakenings a night at this stage in our life, midlife, it can be a sign of potential sleep apnea.
Okay.
So that's one thing to keep in mind if people are like waking up a lot, because their breathing could be waking them up.
Got it. Okay.
And there are some things that you can do that I teach my clients some, like, it's called a designated worry time. Okay.
Okay.
So this is for people who wake up and have a hard time getting back to sleep. Like they start to worry. And that's a lot of people right now. So basically what you do for this exercise is you do this in the early evening. Most people that I work with do this after dinner. You just take a piece of paper or a journal and you divide the page in two, just draw a line down the page. The left-hand side of the page, you write worry. And on the right-hand side column, you write solutions. So you're basically doing a brain dump. So you just list down your worries, and for each worry, you write down the next possible step that you could take to solve that problem. And sometimes it's very concrete. Sometimes it's like, you know exactly what you need to do. Other times it's a little bit more nebulous, like Susie at work has been treating me weird, and you make the thing that you put in the column to resolve it might not make any sense. It might be like, well, I'll have to just continue to like observe or whatever. There might not be like an immediate solution, but the idea behind this exercise is that you're getting your worries down on paper before you go to sleep. That it's out of your head, right? So that if you wake up in the middle of the night and you start to worry, you can remind yourself, hey, I've done my worrying. I've done what I can do, and I will pick back up on my worrying tomorrow. So that's just an exercise for people who are really struggling with being awake for longer than 20 minutes at night. But again, very, very normal for people to have a brief wake up or two during the night.
Okay. Well, that's very helpful for me, because I think yes, I do have trouble falling asleep from time to time, but I was getting so caught up in, oh my God, I wake up and have to go to the bathroom or, whatever. But it's just like, I come back to bed and I fall back to sleep pretty quickly. So I was kind of psyching myself out. I still have trouble falling asleep, and I don't feel like my sleep is great quality, but I was stuck on, oh my God, I'm getting up every night. So, that's just a common thing. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
I feel better. Thank you, Morgan.
I wake up every night.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel much better. Thank you, Morgan.
Yeah. Lots of people do, really. A lot of people do. And, some reasons for that could be you are too hot and you might not know it, right? You're nodding that, yes, that's a definite. Another reason is because our blood sugar has tanked and the adrenaline and cortisol is starting to spike because our blood sugar got too low. Another reason is sleep apnea. So those sleeping events wake us up at night. So there are many reasons why, and sometimes you have to just kind of do some troubleshooting, So for example, one way to troubleshoot is potentially, if you suspect that your blood sugar might be tanking, is have like a small snack, like an hour before you go to bed, keeping it very small, like maybe half a banana and like a tablespoon of almond butter would be like an appropriate snack. And if you find that snack prevents you from having the wake up, then you can probably assume that your blood sugar might have been crashing and that you might need to work a little bit more on being more metabolically balanced and keeping your blood sugar more even throughout the day.
Okay.
So that's a little trick for you.
All right. Awesome. I'm taking notes as we're talking. All right. Awesome.
Is there a difference between sleep deprivation and then someone who has insomnia?
Yes, there is a difference. Sometimes they can overlap, but sleep deprivation is when somebody has the opportunity to sleep. They have several hours that they can sleep, but they are actually sort of choosing not to. So an example would be somebody who is, I'll use a client situation that I've recently had, is somebody who was working on her computer trying to finish projects until like 3 a.m. She didn't have to do that. She could have prioritized her work so that she could go to bed at like 10 or 11, but she just kept working. And as a result, she was sleep deprived. So compare that to somebody who has insomnia. They actually have the opportunity to sleep, but they're not able to do it. They give themselves plenty of opportunity. So it's really the opportunity is the main differentiating factor. Sometimes there are situations where both are happening at the same time, because somebody with insomnia could be getting like, they might be going through a particularly bad stretch, and then they might be getting like 5 hours of sleep for several nights, and that causes sleep deprivation too. But they can be they can be exclusively two different things.
Okay. This is just sort of a general question that came up for me while I was getting ready for today. Do sleep issues show up differently in different phases of your life? I mean, we know about menopause, right? And perimenopause. And so sleep can be affected in that time of life. But what about for, for teenagers, adults, children? I mean, are there different types of sleep issues based on different times in your life?
I would say that the main difference would be the timing of sleep and people's preferences. So for example, teenagers tend to have more of a late night chronotype.
They do.
So you're like, yeah. So they may be, they're sort of wired, just by their biology to want to stay up later and sleep in. Okay. So then as we become adults, into our 20s and 30s, we have more of like kind of what they call a bear chronotype. Most of us have 50% of us have like a bear chronotype where, you might go to bed at 10 or 11, you might wake up at 6 or 7. That's, kind of like normal. Pregnancy can present some challenges for obvious reasons with the hormones and being uncomfortable, with your body, and not uncomfortable with your body, but just like the changes that are happening.
Trust me, uncomfortable, hit it spot on.
Like I've never been pregnant, so I can't speak to that.
Spot on, uncomfortable with your body.
And then as we get older into like, there's really not a set age, but like 50, I don't know, plus, we start to kind of become early birds.
So that has not happened to me.
Yeah. So
it has to me.
So, the early bird special, right? So there's that stereotype of like, when you go to a restaurant, the first people that are there, it's like the 5 o'clock diners are the people who are usually older. And that's me too. And I'm proud of this.
Yeah. Not me at all.
It's me. I eat dinner at 4 o'clock at night. Sometimes my kids are like, what are you doing? That's what I do.
So as we get older, our chronotype tends to lean more toward the early bird. So in our lifespan, it's not as necessarily much more like sleep issues, but it's like the preference for our sleep wake changes a little bit over time.
Got it.
Is that why when I fantasize about sleeping in on the weekend, but then when the weekend comes, I wake up at the same time and I go, I wanted to sleep in.
Well, you know what that means? It means you have a very strong circadian rhythm. So that's really, really good. And speaking of sleeping in on the weekends, people hate me for this.
I want to, but it never happens.
I'm a huge sleep in on the weekend person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So to keep our circadian rhythm strong and entrained, what we want to aim for is an anchored wake up time every morning, right? Okay. Even the weekends. I know people like cringe when I say that, but it actually makes you have more energy during the day, and it actually helps you get to sleep better. And it could probably help you stay asleep as well. I mean, I experienced. So
sorry, Raquel, I see you tearing up over this.
She's really upset.
No, I'm literally on the verge of tears right now, thinking that I have to wake up at 6 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday.
So I will give you an example personally. Several years ago, I would get up at 6 a.m. for work. And then I would stay up until like 1 o'clock or later on the weekend.
Oh no, I cannot do that.
That's me.
And because of that, I would sleep in until like 9. So I had this variance of 3 hours between my wake up time on the weekend and weekdays. And so if you think about it, what it does is it creates a situation called social jet lag.
Yes.
It's very
Yep.
similar to jet lag that we get when we fly from coast to coast. So essentially what we're doing is we're giving ourselves jet lag without the fun of traveling. How crazy is that, right?
I get it, because I can't do it. 9 o'clock hits every night and I'm ready for bed every single night. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what night of the week.
Yeah.
And my kids make fun of me, but I go to bed at 9 o'clock every single
Yeah.
night.
Okay, see, I'm on the other end of that spectrum. Is that I literally hit snooze on my alarm like it's my job.
Okay.
I will snooze for like an hour.
Okay.
Please, Morgan, help me.
Yes. Okay. So I'm so glad you're bringing this up because I just did some content about this. The snooze button is not your friend.
No, I know.
The snooze button should be banned. No, I'm kidding. I'm only just exaggerating. But what the snooze button does, so you think you're giving yourself more sleep, but you're giving yourself this very unsatisfying, low quality sleep in 10-minute chunks.
Yeah.
So you actually will become a little bit more fatigued and less energized in the morning versus if you just get up at the first alarm.
I think that's true.
A fix to this, Raquel, is to put your alarm, whatever alarm you use, out of reach, right? So that you can't snooze it. You have to get your butt out of bed to deal with your alarm. So yeah, the snoozing is not a good thing. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Now, back to the whole sleeping in on the weekend. Okay. We do have a little bit of leeway on the weekend. Like if you stay up a little bit later, it is actually not going to completely wreck your circadian rhythm if you extend that wake up time by an hour. So you can give yourself a little bit of grace period on the weekend by an hour, 1 hour in the morning. And it's probably not going to really mess with your circadian rhythm, or give you social jet lag. And also, this is very interesting. A study showed that women who had variance of more than 60 minutes, they were more prone to gaining weight.
Well, there you go.
So for anyone who's looking to maintain their weight or lose weight or whatever, keeping that regularity with your sleep and wake time is really important.
Okay.
So
I do think that's true, because when I travel for work and have real jet lag, all I want to do is eat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do. I want to snack because I'm so tired.
Yeah. It's completely biological wiring. Our hormones get out of balance. We have these two hormones that are hunger hormones called leptin and ghrelin, and they both get out of balance. And the result is that you are hungrier, you crave more sweets and carbs for that energy because you're sleep deprived. And your satiety signal is off. Like it doesn't tell you when you're full as easily. You want to eat more and you don't realize you're getting full. You keep wanting to eat.
That makes total sense.
It's a real thing. So yeah.
I need to start getting up at 6.
She gave you an hour, Raquel. You can sleep until 7. You can sleep until 7. You don't have to rob yourself of the hour.
I know. Oh, God. Okay, this is literally going to take work. I mean, this is going to be so hard.
Yes, it does. It does take a little work to get your sleep back on track. I mean, but I would say, make these changes gradually. Pick a habit, pick one thing that we talked about maybe during this podcast interview, and work on it for a week. Right. And once you've got that down, add on another habit or behavioral change. So you're not hit with everything at once, because it can get overwhelming, right? To make these changes all at once. So it's a gradual process. It doesn't have to happen in a week.
Okay. There's hope for me. That's good.
There's a lot of hope for you. There's a lot of things you can do. Absolutely. I believe in you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we wrap up, can I change the subject kind of dramatically?
Sure.
I'm going to read this because I wanted to talk about it. On your Instagram, you talk about your breast cancer diagnosis.
Yes.
And you say, quote, years of alcohol consumption using personal care products laden with hormone disruptors and unresolved ancestral trauma had all caught up with me.
Yes.
That's a pretty
Yeah,
Bam.
it's a bam moment right there. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and feel free to ask me anything more, but I really do feel as if there were several factors at play in this breast cancer diagnosis. These two that I've had over the past 4 years.
Well,
Um,
we've talked a lot on the show recently about generational trauma. Is that
yeah,
what you feel played into your?
I do. Yeah, I do feel like there was some unresolved trauma with my mother. She passed away from breast cancer as well. She did. Now, a lot of people
Sorry.
think, oh, thank you. So a lot of people think because my mother had breast cancer, that's why it wasn't genetic. There was not a genetic marker that we tested for positively. It wasn't like that. But I think there was some stuff, without getting into too personal, but there's some stuff that
Sure.
happened with her in her life that I didn't actually know about. And that I don't think dealt with. And I think it was kind of just that grief, and that was passed on to me. I think I had a hard time with grieving her death. And during the time, like, I think there was I was diagnosed in 2018 the first time, and she had died, like, I'm not sure if my timeline is exactly correct, but she had died a few years before that. And then like a year before that, I got divorced. So there was a lot of, and they've done studies on this where they show that like trauma that is stacked up like in a short period of time, oftentimes can trigger some kind of chronic disease. So there's so many factors to it. I don't think I feel like it's rare that it's just like one thing,
Same.
So I had to make a lot of changes in my life, and I'm glad I did.
Well, good. Can you give us an example? I mean, without getting too personal, can you give us an example of a change that you made that you feel has helped you?
Sure. A couple things that are kind of concrete, that are like I don't say easy to do, they're not that easy to do, but I used to drink probably 12 glasses of wine a week, which would be technically considered heavy drinking for a woman. But I didn't really think it was that much, because it was like,
Because
maybe
everybody does it.
yeah, everybody
else
else is doing it. I held a job. I was working out every day. Like I didn't get into fights. I mean, like, there was no like
You're
consequence.
functioning.
I was functioning. Going from that, and alcohol raises your estrogen level. And so I had estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. So I do feel that there was a tie with that. And I've come to find out that my estrogen detox pathways weren't optimal. So there's that.
Okay.
So I have really cut back drastically to maybe like 1 to 3 glasses a week, which I feel like is quite a decrease. Then I've been a makeup junkie since I was 13, and I was using like just any drugstore product, from Chanel to Maybelline, you name it. Like if it was being blogged about, I would buy it. Right.
Yep.
And so a lot of these, unbeknownst to me, a lot of these products have endocrine disrupting chemicals in them.
Yep.
I had to throw out basically everything.
Oh, wow.
I would say 80% of my personal care products had to toss them. So I had to replace them with things that didn't have the gunk in them.
Right.
So I think that was fairly easy to do. It wasn't exactly like cheap to do,
Expensive,
but
though.
but I ended up joining a clean beauty company so that I could get these products at a discount, and I could share them with people and make extra money. So it became like a side hustle for me to share these products. So it ended up being a good situation overall for me and for the people in my circle, because I turned them on to things that could potentially help their health. So
nice. What company do you use for that?
it's called Beauty Counter. They're based in California.
Yeah.
So I'm technically still a consultant, but I really don't spend much time at all doing it anymore like I used to, because the sleep coaching has overtaken my life in a wonderful way.
Yeah.
They are tied. Yeah.
Yeah.
They are tied.
It's interesting that we started talking about your cancer journey and how that has affected your life, and in a positive way, that you've made changes. And one of the things that I was thinking of is, if your sleep quality can affect the efficacy of whatever medication you might be on, whether it's recovering from breast cancer, or if you take high blood pressure medication, or whatever other, lots of other things that, medications that people have to take. I'm wondering if the quality of your sleep can affect that.
Absolutely, it can. And there's a field called chronobiology.
Mhm.
I'm not an expert in this, but this will become more prevalent in the next few years, where they're going to start more often matching somebody's, I'm just going to use chemo, for example. They're going to start matching people's chemo to somebody's sleep-wake cycle. So they're going to like delve more into that over the next
That's
several years.
so amazing.
Yeah.
Because the timing of our drugs can affect our sleep. It's a very complex topic, but yes, to answer your question, absolutely.
This is so interesting. I mean, there's so much more to this than just, I don't fall asleep the second my head hits the pillow.
Yeah, sleep is a very complex thing, but to improve it, there are simple things we can do, like we've talked about today. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be super complicated, although sleep is a complex topic. There's a lot we still don't know about sleep. It
Right.
hasn't been studied for that long, really, if you think about it. So I'm just fascinated by all the things that are being discovered about our sleep, and all the ties that are happening between our different systems. It's fascinating.
Was there anything that you wanted to tell our audience that you didn't have the opportunity to let them know?
Gosh, I feel like we've covered so much. Well, I would say one thing: if you are not sleeping well,
Mhm.
or if somebody in your family is not sleeping well, for example, your child is, really try to avoid labels like I'm a terrible sleeper or Johnny's a bad sleeper, because, Johnny's impressionable, right? So you don't want to label him as the bad sleeper, because it could become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mhm.
So if you are, for example, having trouble sleeping, instead of saying I'm a terrible sleeper, it's saying I've been having some struggle sleeping lately, but I am trying some new things to make it better, and I am confident that I'm going to be able to reclaim my sleep, or something to that effect. Because we can change our sleep story. It's not a predetermined thing. So I think our language and how we speak of our sleep and the sleep of our family or children is really, really underestimated.
The power of language.
It's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Morgan, thank you so much for sharing so much really important information with us and with our listeners. I mean, I think this is going to be very impactful for so many people. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you.
Wow. I learned so much. I mean, the whole thing about social jet lag, that was huge for me.
Yeah.
Because literally, I get crap sleep during the week. And then on the weekend, I'm like, I'm going to sleep all day. And I do.
I mean, people make fun of me all the time for going to bed at 9 o'clock, but I got the gift of sleep.
Wow. Well, I strive to be more like you, Jennifer. And
I
that
don't
is
know if you want to go to bed at 9.
well, no, I don't want to go to bed at 9, but I am going to work on my sleep hygiene for sure.
But
So-
isn't sleep such a beautiful topic? Like, I love going to bed. I love getting in my covers with my
Yes.
pillows, reading a little bit. I love
Like-
dreaming.
Yeah,
It's
and like
just-
having like cuddly, like soft pajamas and
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, the lights are down and my cat's purring. I mean, it's
It's a beautiful
lot.
thing.
Just enjoy the sleep time.
Enjoy the sleep time. And the thing I want to say about Morgan, which I think is so awesome, I am so glad at the end she mentioned the power of words and
Yes.
putting labels and how we describe things,
Mhm.
because everything about her, all the things that she had to go through,
Mhm.
they all seem to create a positive event in her life, but it could have easily gone the other way. But I think because of the way she words and phrases and then works on things, instead of it being, her demise, these are things that just made her the awesome person that she is.
That is a very, very good point. I mean, and now she's learning from what she's gone through and she's helping other people.
She's got it all connected together. She's got the sleep, the nutrition, the how we talk to ourselves, the breathing, the meditation, all of these things that she talked about. They're all she did say she was holistic. I forgot that. It's all the holistic realm, and it's beautiful.
Everything affects everything else. You can't
Exactly.
you can't narrow it down to just one thing. Like, what's playing into other things in your life. That's very powerful to keep in mind going through life, that it isn't always just one thing.
Thanks,
That's
Raquel.
awesome. Thanks, Jennifer.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.